All right, so today we are going to be looking at the short read, the informational text called The Open Road by Monica Halpern. And when you look at this, I want you to just think for a second, what do you think this could be about? What do you notice about the text? What do you notice about any graphic features, right? I see an old car here. I see historic US 66 highway. I notice that there's a timeline on the bottom. So these are just all kinds of things that maybe make me think this is about, seeing as it's called The Open Road, maybe they're going to talk about US Highway 66 and what it was important for. So we're going to read through this together, and we are going to be looking for key details to eventually determine the main idea. So you can either open the text in the link that's on the Google slideshow, or you can use your Notability Developing a Nation consumable in Notability. So you will follow along and just do what I do. So you have the right annotations moving forward. The Open Road. The first automobiles appeared in the 1890s. Powered by an electric motor instead of horses, they were called horseless carriages. At that time, there were only 144 miles of paved road in the nation. When people went for a drive, cars bounced along dirt tracks. Dust blew into their eyes, and mud splattered their clothes. So the thing that I noticed that is important in that would certainly be a major difference between now and then, that the fact that automobiles appeared first in the 1890s, and when that happened, they only had 144 miles of paved roads. We have a lot more of that now. Not only were there few paved roads in those days, but there were no gas stations or road maps. The new motor cars broke down often. For this reason, people did not go far. The first cars were also extremely expensive. Few people could afford them, so there was little reason for the country to build interstate highways. For many, horse-drawn carriages or trains were still the best way to travel. So now they're saying these cars are, not the best because they don't have gas stations, they break down, they don't have mechanics, they couldn't really go very far unless they were using horse-drawn carriages or trains. Looking at paragraph 3, then in 1908, Henry Ford introduced the Model T automobile. Unlike those before it, this car was affordable. Because it didn't cost much, many people bought it. As more people owned cars, the need for paved roads, gas stations, and new maps increased. As a result, the Model T helped change transportation. Well, that makes a big deal, right? That's a big difference. So Henry Ford, I'm just going to underline his name, right? What do you notice? Ford. Ford is a type of car that's on the road these days. And he introduced the Model T, right? And what did this do? Well, this helped change the transportation. Okay? This was making cars way more affordable. People were actually able to afford them and buy them. Okay, paragraph 4. People with cars wanted to go places. They wanted to hit the open road and explore America. However, to do so, they needed better roads. So in 1916, Congress passed the Federal Aid Road Act. It made funds, right? Funds are money, just in case we didn't know. Funds available to help states build 2-lane interstate highways. Workers would build the new roads, creating new jobs. So, what's important in there to me is that in 1916, they passed the Federal Road Act and built 2-lane interstate highways. Definitely a big deal. Route 66, and you could either say Route 66 or you could say Route 66. That's one of those words that people say different ways, and neither is right nor wrong. They're both the same. Route 66 was one of the first good roads in the 1920s. It linked small towns and big cities from Chicago to Los Angeles. It stretched about 3,850 kilometers, which is 2,400 miles, across 2/3 of the country. Local merchants built gas stations, motels, and all-night diners beside the highway. Some built special attractions for tourists. People came to see the sights. Others drove west to California, seeking a better life. By the 1930s, truckers began transporting goods cross-country on Route 66. Many of these travelers bought gas and food and stayed in the motels along the highway. Route 66 became the perfect open road. So, to me, Route 66 was one of the first good roads, right? This is something that you could use. You could go from small town to big city, all the way from Chicago to Los Angeles. It was perfect, right? You could travel, you could go visit people, you could go drop things off, and they built things along the road so the travelers would come and there would be tourists and people could get further and further around. That's a pretty important thing. Let's just finish up here. Today, not much is left of Route 66. Other highways are bigger and faster, but travelers can still find road signs that show where America's oldest highways once stretched. Yes, I've actually seen Route 66 in Chicago because you can see it. It's I think it's like the beginning and the end of Route 66 because it starts, obviously, if you were to go into Chicago, all the way into Chicago, the most eastern part that you could be is Lake Michigan. So it could start right there. And you can see these signs. They're brown signs that say historic route and that it's U.S. Route 66. And the name changes throughout the different towns that it goes through, but overall it's Route 66 in Illinois. So maybe you should look out for those signs. I was just trying to think of where else you could see it. But so I guess that's my question to you is, can you find out more information about Route 66? Because it's not very far from our homes. Another thing I notice here in the timeline is this, started in 1908, that Model Ts were mass produced. So mass produced, that just means a lot of them. They started making them, maybe in a factory where a lot of them were being made at once. Then they started Route 66 in 1926, and they were finished with it by 1937. 1956, the Federal Act Highway, that's when they made the interstate highway system. And then the interstate highway system was completed in 1982. So that's a really, really good span of time that they went from roads all the way to highways. So what I want you to do now is you're going to start thinking about a main idea. What could be the main idea of this whole short article?